Hello everyone, David here. Whew. Well, that was one hell of a finale. Damn. Just, wow. So much happens in this finale that it's gonna be a little tough to review. At least I initially thought it was going to be a bit of a challenge to review this finale because, man, first of all, welcome guys to my review of the Season 2 finale entitled S.O.S. for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And they decided to take the last two episodes of the season and compile it together into the finale. The last episode was technically episode 20, but the last two, 21 and 22, are part 1 of part 2 of the finale, wrapping things up for this season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and leading up to the now confirmed Season 3 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I'm definitely looking forward to, and I'm assuming it's going to be coming in September, just like this one. And this finale is just perfect because it wraps quite an awful lot of things of the season, while at the same time leaving a couple things for you to think about leading into Season 3. Some subtle, some kind of like, what the hell? Well, mainly just one big WTF moment there at the end, which I'll talk about in a second. But this finale was a little bit crowded, I'll admit, but it had so much going for it, and it's a 2-hour finale that I'm going to try my best to review the basic bullet points of what I loved and did not like so much about the finale without trying to summarize the finale, because I feel like sometimes I do that in my reviews. I end up summarizing the episode more so than reviewing it, and that's a bit of a problem because there's a huge difference between the two, and sometimes summarizing takes up a little bit too much time, much like I'm doing right now. So I'm just gonna hit the basic beats of what this episode had instead of going from beginning to end, working through the whole thing with you guys and trying to emit my feelings about it. Instead of doing that, I'd rather just go, okay, this happened and I liked it, and then this happened and I didn't like about it, and I'm going to try to maintain that kind of format for this review, and hopefully you guys are okay with it. But I will admit that one of the things that I liked about this finale is that even though it was a 2-hour finale in which you got 2 separate episodes, it never really felt like a two-parter. There was never a point where I looked at it and they cut to commercial and I was like, I think that's where part 1 ends and then part 2 begins on the next one. I never saw that. I never saw the cut between the 2 episodes, because sometimes you're able to tell. Sometimes you see a difference in direction or a difference in momentum or the difference in the writing or something like that. But here I just felt like it was just one continuous 2-hour episode, and I feel like I need to give them credit for that. Let's go ahead and talk about Skye, because I feel like in the first half of the episode, which mainly deals with S.H.I.E.L.D. continuing her plot to wage war against S.H.I.E.L.D., I feel like part 1 is mainly her just moving her pieces around like in a chess game, and then in part 2 is where she actually executes the plan. However, like I said, that transition between part 1 and part 2 is just so seamless that I was hardly able to notice that this was a 2-part episode, because some episodes do that. This one didn't really do that much. It felt like a continuous 2-hour movie, or at least about an hour and a half without commercials. But what I found kind of interesting is that Skye serves like some kind of symbol in that first half. A symbol for both parties, where there's like a clear misunderstanding between the two, where one thinks the other did it, or at least some of the Inhumans believe that S.H.I.E.L.D. attacked first, and then S.H.I.E.L.D. believes that the Inhumans are attacking first, and you have certain people on each side who actually know what's going on, who are smarter than the average person, who are able to catch on to certain details that they're like, you know what, this doesn't really make any sense. I think that this is what's going on. And on the human side, you got some people that know about the plan, but they are going along with S.H.I.E.L.D., Gordon, for example. And then you got people on S.H.I.E.L.D. side, like Coulson, who know that things couldn't have gone down that way. Like Coulson stated, Gonzalez wouldn't have been that sloppy to pull off a move like that. So there are people on both sides that know what's going on, but the majority of these two factions have no idea what the hell's going on, and both just want to wage war at each other. And as a viewer, you get kind of frustrated because you're like, oh, if only some of them, at least more of them, knew what is actually going on. At least the majority of them knew. You could avoid a war here, and you could avoid some rather hefty death tolls in this episode, which I'll tackle later on in this review. But it's just frustrating to see the two of these factions struggle with whether or not they should attack and kill the rest of the other people. Humans versus S.H.I.E.L.D. That's essentially what the finale was going to be. That's what I predicted it was going to be, and that's practically what we got. But Skye, like I said, was caught in the middle, and in the first half, she's like on the human side. She has this fight with May, which I thought was very, cool, not because of the choreography necessarily, but because of the emotional undertone of it. Because you got Skye and May, who have trained with each other this whole time. She's her May is Skye's S.O. They've had this long-lasting history, but now Skye has met her mother. This is her blood. She wants to defend her, so you have that fight that is a little difficult to watch because you got these two that have had history and now they're fighting for the meantime. And in my opinion, I was kind of feeling for Skye because, again, this is the girl who an awful lot of people were a huge fan of in season 1, and she has taken a really well developed and fully layered turn since the ending of season 1, and I can only imagine how much more potentially damaged she's going to be in season 3, being that she has witnessed these two groups which hold family, whether it be through blood or through friendship and trust and loyalty on S.H.I.E.L.D. side, waging war against each other, and then a couple of casualties happen along the way. One being her mother, and the other being her father, who doesn't get killed off, but his memory is completely wiped, so it's almost as good as being dead at this point. And Skye, I just can't. I have to give her respect. I have to give Chloe Bennett props for pulling off a great performance, and at the same time, I have to give the character respect for going through these events and still maintaining a sense of strength by the end of this episode, to where she's probably going to be a recruiter for Inhumans that can hopefully help S.H.I.E.L.D. rather than fight it. However, the reason why Skye goes from defending her Inhuman family to defending her S.H.I.E.L.D. family by the end is because she realizes Jiaying's true purposes, which is a call similar to another call that a character made in the past that is in this episode, and again, that's another storyline I'll talk about in a second, but Skye ultimately makes that S.H.I.E.L.D. infused call, saying, hey, if it means killing my mother to save all these people, I'll save practically humanity at this point, because if it starts off with S.H.I.E.L.D., chances are she's going to expand throughout the entire world until anybody who's not Inhuman gets killed off, and she wipes out the majority of the human race in order to create this sense of evolution, this brand new world. And Skye makes that decision that's very reminiscent of a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, which again adds another layer to her character. However, this turn, going from defending the Inhumans to going against the Inhumans, was caused by a bit of a convenience. Her conveniently walking into that meeting between Reina and Jiaying in the middle of the night. And I feel like that happens a couple of times in this episode, which is one of the minor story issues that this episode did have. Another one would be Mac conveniently seeing Skye being taken away by those Inhumans, and if it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have been brought back into action. Which leads me to another problem, and that is that there's a few things that happen in this episode that either cancel out previous things or don't really go nowhere, and to me, they just didn't work that well. Mac is one of them, but at the end of this episode, he decides to not quit. Not even on camera does he do so. And I'm like, okay, then what's the point of him walking in dramatically saying, you know what, I just can't do this anymore, I'm going to quit in the last episode, only for him to come back here after the events that happened in this episode. I mean, you could argue that. You could argue that because of what happened in this episode, he decided not to quit, but the least you can do is at least have him have a scene with Coulson saying, listen, I thought about it, and I'm going to go ahead and stay, because I feel like I owe you one, like Coulson said. But they couldn't even have that, and I'm like, this feels weak. This doesn't give credit to that previous scene in that last episode where he said that he was going to quit. Cal was obviously going to be in this finale after being taken by S.H.I.E.L.D. as this peace offering by the Inhumans in last week's episode. And as much as I liked his role, and I liked the fact that he actually turned into Mr. Hyde, which is his character from the comics, and he looked the part, he looked great. There were a couple of scenes, mainly when he's in this containment unit that S.H.I.E.L.D. has always had, and used it on Ward, used it on, I don't know, who else did they use it on? But mostly Ward. Ward spent an awful lot of time in there. But I felt like a couple of scenes could have been trimmed, because I felt like we were retreading certain tropes about him and his past and his denial of Jiaying's true purposes. And then later on we go through that again where Coulson has him pinned up with the car and they're talking about it once again. I feel like a few of these could have been trimmed. Like, you could have had at least one scene with him. I feel like they could have kept the bit where he's being pinned down by the truck and Coulson's trying to get to him, and trim these earlier scenes where he's in the containment unit. I feel like there were certain parts of his story that, even though I liked, felt just a tiny bit filler. So yeah, Simmons likes Fitz now, apparently. I don't know where that came from. Actually, I kind of do. I'm completely convinced that the reason why this is happening is because people online were shipping them. The writers took notice of this, so they're like, you know what? Let's have them be together, even though it's kind of unrealistic. Because as much as it hurt to watch Fitz being in that pain and being kind of rejected by Simmons initially, it's realistic. All right, life sometimes doesn't work that well, especially with this. And trust me, I know about this. I know I've been in this situation, so that's why it kind of hits close to home. And I felt like it struck the right emotional beat. But now they're kind of canceling that out by having Simmons actually, at least insinuating that Simmons does like Fitz after all. And I'm like, guys, why? We see Ward and Agent 33 torture Bobby after capturing her in the last episode, mainly because apparently 33 remembers that Mockingbird gave her up to Hydra because of that call. This is the character that I was talking about that made a similar call in the past to the one that Skye made at the end of this episode with her mother, in which she had to sacrifice one of her own to save the many. You know, some Star Trek shit going on right there. But this comes back to hunt Bobby because 33 remembers this prior to her being taken in by S.H.I.E.L.D. after S.H.I.E.L.D.'s encounter with Ward trying to get cut off one of Hydra's heads in that previous episode. And basically this was their plan all along. And I liked it because, again, this is full on Ward being a villain once again, being sadistic. And man, that torture scene. Man, way to make a torture scene spine tingling and just painful to watch while staying away from very gratuitous blood or gore or that type of thing. Not taking things too far by having those needles going to her underneath her nails. I'm like, oh, that looks way more painful than getting a finger cut off with one of those hedge clippers or anything like that, or waterboarding. That looked more painful to me. But at the same time, they were able to create some kind of torture that is suitable for a PG rating, and that PG rating was pushed in this episode. All right, something happens later on that was also pretty shocking, but in this during this torture segment, Bobby manages to escape, only to be caught again. That was kind of like I said. I felt like certain things happened here or there that went nowhere, and Bobby tried to escape, only to get caught again. And the only serviceable thing that this did is make Ward and Agent 33 call out the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to her because they know that they're not going to be... They felt like at this point, they're like, you know what? We're not going to be able to get to this girl. Let's go ahead and torture her emotionally by showing her team, especially Hunter, get killed. And this was a really well-handled subplot between Ward, 33, Hunter, and Bobby because there were parallels going on. Especially that back-to-back cut of having Bobby take the bullet for Hunter after that trap got set up. That was very Saw-like. I don't know why, but for some reason I thought of the Saw movies. And then cutting back to Ward, who shoots May, only to realize that was not May, that was Kara. And did you see the way he unloaded his clip into her? I'm like, that's what he was gonna do with May, only for him to realize that was Kara. And I was like, taste of your own medicine, Ward. And it was also a good decision for the writers because now this gives Ward an even bigger incentive to wage war against S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, he was already messed up. He was already a psychopath, and now he's going to make things personal after S.H.I.E.L.D., especially May, made things personal by tricking him into killing Kara. And I'm like, this is perfect. This is perfect. I'm not sure if they were implying that he's going to create his own Hydra there at the end in the bar scene with those guys. But maybe he's creating his own little, Suicide Squad. I'm sorry, I'm using that term because it's so relevant these days. But I feel like he's creating his own little team to, again, wage war against S.H.I.E.L.D. And it'll be interesting to see, and I'm hoping that that's a continuous thing happening in Season 3. And Kara's not the only one that bites the dust in this finale. I mean, there's a significant death toll, like I said, in this finale that really encompasses the producer's decision or their desire to make Season 2 a lot darker than in Season 1, while at the same time still maintaining the Marvel humor that it's known for. And this finale just kills off so many characters. Kara was one of them. Jiaying herself at the hands of her husband Cal, which I thought was definitely appropriate. When I saw Skye shaking her mother, or at least vibrating her entrails to kind of like I said, trying to kill her or suffocate her, so to speak, I was like, no, it would be better if Cal was the one doing this. And sure enough, Cal comes out of nowhere, which I thought was kind of weird. Him getting out of that room that was like that was a metallic door. I'm like, how did you get? Well, he is Mr. Hyde, but I thought it was very poetic and appropriate that Cal was the one to kill. It was very Darth Vader Emperor type of thing. Even though I was kind of expecting that between Skye and her father, I was still very happy that it was her father and her mother who had to keep a promise between themselves and protect their daughter from themselves. And I thought that was ultimately appropriate. You also got Reyna, who got killed off in this episode. Granted, the way she died was similar to how Bakshi died, where I felt like there should have been a better death for her instead of just coming out of nowhere and be like, oh, there, I killed you. But I definitely saw the reasoning behind it. I definitely saw Reyna pulling practically a Gus Fring on her, saying, oh, you want to tell people what you know? Fine, then I'm going to kill you off here. And I feel like Reyna should have been a little bit more careful. Like, really, you're going to tell this girl, you know, after you have a speculation that this S.H.I.E.L.D is evil, you're going to just go forward to her and be like, hey, I know about you, and tell her within close quarters, like, leave a note. Why can't you just leave a note? But anyways, it did kill off Reyna, and it leaving S.H.I.E.L.D with one less problem to deal with. We got a four-way fight on the ship between Gordon, Mac, Fitz, and Coulson, and the fight itself was okay, and the reasoning behind that is because I feel like there were moments in this episode where they were a little bit ambitious, a little too ambitious, to where I felt like the producers, the director, and the writers wanted to have a Marvel movie of a finale. But they have to realize that they're on TV, and with being on TV comes a TV budget, and sometimes that budget showed here and there in this finale. In fact, there were a couple of shots where that looked either a little bit too obvious of an effect, especially that shot again, they're trying to replicate that one-track shot of Skye defeating the redhead girl who has this cool yet kind of cliche power of being able to duplicate herself. And that fight could have looked cool if maybe they had a bigger budget, because there were certain shots where you can kind of tell where they're moving out of frame so that they can cut away to like a separate shot of Chloe Bennett as Skye going in there. That way it looks like she's fighting multiple people. But I was able to tell, maybe it's just me because I look into that stuff. I'm planning on being a director, so I kind of know how these things work. And it definitely reminded me an awful lot of the Neo versus the Mr. Smith's fight, or Agent Smith's fight from Matrix Reloaded. And I feel like that's what they were going for. But it's a TV budget, so you can only do so much with that. But outside of that, there were also a couple of other fights where you can kind of see the stunt doubles' faces, especially that one between Bobby, Ward, and Kara in the hallway. There were a couple of shots where I'm like, man, Brett Dawson really didn't want to partake in any of this, because often I was able to tell that it was a double, and that kind of took me out a little bit. But this fight between Mac and Gordon and Fitz and Coulson worked because he was a teleporter, and before it went on too far to be able to tell that there was an effect and they couldn't pull it off all that well, Fitz engages the little thing that kind of hinders Gordon's powers. And because of that, Gordon kind of makes a mistake and teleports into Fitz's bar, thus killing him. And that's the end of Gordon there. And along with that, he releases a shard that Coulson manages to grab before it detonates. However, because he's not an inhuman, his hand starts to turn into that gray matter, or that gray, ashy stuff. And right when that was happening, I'm like, Mac is holding an axe. Oh God. I was like, oh my God. And what makes it even shocking is that it's Coulson. Coulson gets his hand cut off. For one, it's significant because this is Coulson. How is this going to play a part in Season 3? Is he going to get a robotic hand? But what also kind of made it interesting is that this is the Star Wars reference that apparently Kevin Feige has been trying to put into all of the Phase 2 movies. Because if you guys watch Star Wars, almost every movie, not all of them, but in almost every movie, a character gets his or her hand, mostly him, gets his hand or arm cut off. And he's been trying to put that in all of the Phase 2 movies, and they're in there. And also in Avengers Age of Ultron. I'm not going to spoil who, but it happens in that movie as well. And now they put it in Season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I thought that was really fun, and at the same time, one of the huge shocking moments that leads me to wonder how they're going to play that off in Season 3. Even though I have my speculation that they're going to find a way to save money on the budget by having him have like some kind of robotic prosthetic limb from Stark Industries or something like that that looks very, it has flesh on the hand right here, so all he has to do is roll down his sleeve and then boom, normal looking hand, and they don't have to waste on money or anything else on effects, and they could just carry on through with that. But there's plenty of other stuff to talk about that trickles into season 3. And of course, the big one is that last scene where Simmons gets gobbled up by the Kree mural or obelisk or whatever the hell that thing is. That was the precious cargo Gonzalez had in his ship. And we saw a couple of instances of that thing dissolving itself, kind of swooshing around inside of its container and then forming back up again. But we never really saw it. In my opinion, I never felt like it was alive. It just felt like a reaction that the Kree put into this rock. Like it was a normal rock. Kree put their technology or their power or whatever the hell into it, and that's what kind of makes it that response. Similar to the Earth, you know, the plate tectonics on Earth are always moving. I mean, it's not a sentient being. You know, the Earth is not a sentient being. I'm not saying it's not alive. It technically is. It's got a core and everything, but it's not alive. It doesn't think. It doesn't have anything like that. But now, after seeing it gobble up Simmons, I'm like, damn, this is the big shocking moment for me, because again, you involve a character that I care about, Simmons. This is poor old Simmons. She's adorable. Why does she have to be gobbled up? And even though she's a series regular, and that makes me optimistic that we're going to see her again in like an alternate dimension or whatever, still, I'm fearing her safety for some reason. And what made it even more ominous and dark, and again made me fear her safety more, is a little detail. And that little detail is the fact that usually with shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or anything that's on network television like Fox or ABC or CBS, when it comes to dramas or TV shows that revolve around science fiction, when a big dun-dun-dun moment happens, they usually have some kind of dun-dun-dun related musical cue to give you the sense like, oh my god, this is big. This scene does not have that. The rock gobbles her up, it forms back up again inside of the container, and you don't even, there's no music, there's nothing, it just cuts to black, and I'm like, that's the best way you could have done that, and thank God for that, because I feel like a musical cue could have ruined that scene. And there's other things to mention in the resolution of this episode that I feel sets up season 3 rather well and rather subtly, like Coulson mentioning the layouts of his plans for what he has in store for S.H.I.E.L.D. in the foreseeable future. Bobby insinuates that she might be quitting, and maybe she will quit, and this might lead into the spinoff, who knows. May's going on vacation, and like I said, Skye is going to be recruiting other Inhumans, but incognito. She's going to try to keep it from being out in the open. But this scene just takes the cake. All right, this this actually makes me want September to come around faster. Okay, now I know this video is already running very, very long, so I'm just gonna wrap up real quickly. The finale delivered. Sure, it had its problems, mainly story-wise, and that's a little bit of a treachery, because I'm able to forgive those technical problems, like the fights or the effects, because it is a TV show. But some of the story elements that I did have an issue with hurt a little bit more because of how well paced and well balanced and well written the show has been in this latter half of the second season. But even with that, I felt like it delivered much more on the good, and this is a type of finale that Gotham wished it would have had. I'm sorry, but yeah, shots fired. So for that, I give the finale for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2 a low 9 out of 10. Yes, I'm going to the 9, but like I said, it's a low because I feel like they did stumble on a couple of story beats that I think they didn't know exactly where to go with, especially with Matt quitting or serving the fans by giving Simmons a little bit of an interest in Fitz that I felt was out of nowhere. I mean, that felt more out of nowhere to me than Black Widow liking Hulk in Avengers Age of Ultron. But that's just me. So let me know what you guys thought of the finale for Season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and will you be continuing to watch the show into its 3rd season. And man, I just cannot wait for Season 3, and I cannot wait for Season 2 of Agent Carter, because I'm really happy these two shows got renewed, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to expand the Marvel Cinematic Universe way more than they already have. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.